The following program contains graphic descriptions of violence and may include disturbing content. Viewer discretion is advised. The man who would become one of history's most infamous serial killers entered the world under a veil of secrecy. Theodore Robert Bundy was born on November 24, 1946, in a home for unwed mothers in Burlington, Vermont. His mother, Eleanor Louise Cowell, was just 22 years old and unmarried, a deep stigma at the time. To avoid the shame of illegitimacy, Louise's parents, Samuel and Eleanor Cowell, raised Ted as their own, pretending he was their son, and that his mother was his older sister. Bundy would not learn the truth about his parentage until years later, a revelation that some believe fueled his deep-seated rage. His grandfather, Samuel, was a volatile and abusive man, prone to violent outbursts, yelling at family members, and even abusing animals. Reports suggest that Bundy witnessed his grandfather physically harming his grandmother and torturing neighborhood pets. Whether this environment shaped Bundy's psyche is a matter of speculation, but it was clear that violence had long been a part of his world. Eventually, Louise moved with Ted to Tacoma, Washington in 1950, where she met and married Johnny Culpepper Bundy, a hospital cook. Ted took his stepfather's last name, but he never accepted him as his real father. Despite Johnny Bundy's efforts to bond with him, taking him on camping trips and trying to teach him discipline, Ted remained emotionally distant. From an early age, Bundy exhibited troubling behavior. As a child, he was charming but detached, rarely forming strong emotional connections. He struggled socially, though he maintained a facade of normalcy. Beneath his pleasant exterior, however, lurked a fascination with the macabre. Some chilling incidents from his childhood later surfaced. At the age of 3, Bundy's aunt woke up to find her young nephew standing at the foot of her bed, smiling, as he held a handful of knives he had taken from the kitchen. The knives were arranged around her body. She recalled how eerily silent he was, just standing there, watching. By his early teens, Bundy was stealing women's underwear from neighbors' homes. He spent hours peeping into windows, obsessing over women who had no idea they were being watched. His voyeurism escalated. He learned how to silently creep into homes and take items just for the thrill of it. Bundy's academic performance was above average, but inconsistent. He was highly intelligent, yet he struggled with personal relationships. Some teachers later described him as polite, but socially awkward. Others saw a different side, cold, manipulative, and calculating. During his teenage years, Bundy became obsessed with true crime and detective magazines, particularly those featuring graphic photos of violent crime scenes. He devoured books about serial rapists and murderers, memorizing the details. The idea of dominating, overpowering, and controlling women fascinated him. Despite his awkwardness in high school, Bundy was determined to craft an image of success. He enrolled at the University of Puget Sound before transferring to the University of Washington, where he studied psychology. Bundy learned to manipulate people's perceptions of him. He was charming, articulate, and intelligent. It was at the University of Washington that Bundy fell in love with Stephanie Brooks, a beautiful and wealthy woman who fit the image of the perfect girlfriend he had always wanted. She was sophisticated, came from a privileged background, and had ambitions. But in 1968, she ended the relationship, telling Bundy that he lacked direction and ambition. This rejection devastated him. The humiliation of losing someone he saw as his ideal partner festered into a deep resentment toward women. He began crafting his double life, one where he would appear successful, polite, and normal to the world while nurturing his darkest impulses in secret. Bundy's rage boiled over into something far more sinister in 1974, when young women in Washington began disappearing. On January 4, 1974, 18-year-old Karen Sparks, a University of Washington student, was attacked while sleeping in her basement bedroom. Bundy bludgeoned her skull with a metal rod before violating her unconscious body. She miraculously survived, but was left with permanent brain damage. Only a month later, on February 1st, 1974, Linda Ann Healy, another young university student, vanished. She was a radio broadcaster with a bright future, but Bundy had other plans. He broke into her basement apartment, knocked her unconscious, dressed her in fresh clothes, and carried her away. Her skull was later discovered at one of Bundy's dumping grounds. By spring, Bundy had perfected his hunting method. He would feign injury or disability, often wearing a fake arm cast or using crutches to appear vulnerable. Once a sympathetic woman stopped to help, he would lure her to his car, where he had removed the passenger seat, making it easier to subdue his victims. Between March and July of 1974, Bundy escalated his attacks. March 12th, Donna Manson, 19, disappeared from the Evergreen State College. April 17th, Susan Rancourt, 18, vanished from Central Washington State College. May 6th, Roberta Parks, 20, was last seen walking to meet friends. June 1st, Brenda Ball, 22, was last seen at a bar near Seattle. June 11th, Jorgen Hawkins, 18, disappeared near her sorority house. Each of these women was taken to a remote forested location where Bundy strangled them to death and engaged in disturbing post-mortem activities. He later admitted that he would return to the corpses, sometimes days later, to relive the murders. Bundy's boldness reached terrifying heights on July 14, 1974, at Lake Sammamish State Park in broad daylight. Wearing a white tennis outfit and a fake sling, Bundy approached women and introduced himself as Ted. He claimed he needed help loading a sailboat onto his Volkswagen Beetle. Janice Ott, 23, agreed to help. She was never seen alive again. Later that same day, Bundy returned and used the same tactic to lure Denise Naslund, 19, into his car. She also vanished. Unlike his previous abductions, Bundy had taken 2 victims in one day, a sign that his bloodlust was accelerating. Witnesses provided police with a description of Ted and his Volkswagen Beetle. It was the first real break in the case, but by the time authorities connected the dots, Bundy had already moved on. Ted Bundy's transformation from an awkward but charming young man to a remorseless predator was complete. He had honed his tactics, developed a hunting ground, and learned to manipulate those around him. But this was only the beginning. Bundy's crimes would soon spread beyond Washington, leaving a trail of blood across multiple states. By the end of 1974, Ted Bundy had already murdered at least 8 women in Washington and Oregon. But his insatiable hunger for violence and control only grew stronger. As the police began closing in on the Ted suspect, Bundy fled Washington, relocating to Utah in September 1974, a move that would mark the next terrifying chapter of his killing spree. It didn't take long for women to start disappearing in Utah. October 2nd, 1974, Nancy Wilcox, 16, a bright high school student, was last seen getting into a Volkswagen Beetle in Holiday, Utah. October 18th, 1974, Melissa Smith, 17, the daughter of a police chief, vanished after leaving a pizza parlor. Her body was found 9 days later. She had been beaten, raped, strangled, and carefully redressed in different clothing. October 31st, 1974, Laura Ann Aim, 17, disappeared on Halloween night. Her naked, decomposed body was discovered a month later. Bundy's method was now brutally perfected. In November 1974, Bundy traveled to Colorado, where he kidnapped and murdered Corinne Campbell, 23. She had been staying at a hotel in Snowmass, Colorado, when she vanished from the hallway. Her naked, beaten corpse was found a month later, dumped in the mountains. By January 1975, Bundy was moving between Utah and Colorado frequently, abducting women in different states to avoid suspicion. January 12, 1975, Debbie Kent, 17, disappeared after leaving a school play. A handcuff key found in the parking lot matched the set used to restrain another woman Bundy had attacked. What Bundy didn't know was that his next victim would survive. On November 8, 1974, Bundy targeted Carol DeRanche, 18, in Murray, Utah. Disguised as a police officer, Bundy flashed a fake badge and told Carol that someone had tried to break into her car. He convinced her to come with him to the station, but instead he drove her towards a desolate area. Sensing something was wrong, Carol fought back. Bundy snapped, pulling out handcuffs and trying to restrain her. But in his struggle, he accidentally locked both cuffs onto the same wrist, giving Carol an opportunity to kick the door open and escape. She ran into the street, flagging down another car as Bundy sped off into the night. Carol immediately went to the real police and described the man, his car, and his attempted abduction. She was the first known survivor to escape Ted Bundy. As the missing persons cases piled up, the police focused on two key details. 1. A man named Ted had been approaching women for help. 2. A tan Volkswagen Beetle was seen near multiple abduction sites. Detectives ran background checks on men named Ted and found Ted Bundy's name on their suspect list. They discovered that his car matched Carol DeRanche's description. On August 16, 1975, Ted Bundy was arrested in Utah for evading police after a traffic stop. When officers searched his Volkswagen, they found handcuffs, a crowbar, an ice pick, and rope, a serial killer's toolkit. The police now had their suspect, but they didn't yet know the true scope of his crimes. 1977, Bundy was extradited to Colorado to stand trial for the murder of Karen Campbell. But in December 1977, he escaped from jail. Using a small hacksaw, Bundy sawed a hole in the ceiling light fixture of his cell, slipping through into the jailer's apartment and walking right out the front door. By the time police realized he was missing, Ted Bundy was already hundreds of miles away. Bundy fled to Florida, where his most violent attacks would occur. Ted Bundy arrived in Tallahassee, Florida, in January 1978, broke and desperate. With nothing left to lose, he unleashed his final killing spree. January 15, 1978. Bundy broke into the Chi Omega sorority house on the Florida State University campus. Within 15 minutes, he bludgeoned, strangled, and sexually assaulted Lisa Levy, 20, and Margaret Bowman, 21. Two other women, Karen Chandler and Kathy Kleiner, barely survived. February 9, 1978. Bundy kidnapped and killed 12-year-old Kimberly Leach, his youngest victim. By now, the FBI's 10 most wanted list included Bundy's name. He was caught a week later, driving a stolen car. Bundy's trial in 1979 was televised, making him the first serial killer to become a media sensation. He charmed the public, even proposing to his girlfriend Carol Ann Boone in court. Despite his antics, the evidence was overwhelming. On July 24, 1979, Bundy was sentenced to death for the Chi Omega murders. In 1980, he received a second death sentence for Kimberly Leach's murder. As his execution date approached, Bundy finally confessed to over 30 murders. Experts believe the true number is over 100. It's too late. If you found this story as chilling as we did, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps keep Evil Exposed, bringing you the darkest stories from the depths of true crime. Until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes open.